morning, everyone. Today I will be refuting the claim that it would be more advantageous for Southern California to increasingly rely on public transit. My opponent's three secondary claims were public transit is less expensive, public transit reduces congestion, and most of all, public transit helps the environment. However, my counterclaims are that public transit is expensive for the government to maintain standards, public transit does not reach all the areas in the city, and private vehicles provide more mobility. Firstly, public transit costs local and state governments a lot of money to maintain its standards. According to government reports, the funds come from three sources, which include the state tax assistance. But ever since the budget crisis in California for the past 5 years, the funds from the state tax assistance, STA, have stopped. Thus, it is more expensive for the government to uphold its public transit ideals. Furthermore, my opponent mentions that automobile costs more than $15,000 a year to own and operate. But I would like to say that used cars cost a lot less than $10,000, some even $3,000 a year or so depending on their mileage and use. Therefore, private means of transportation prove to have an edge over public transit. Moving on to my opponent's second claim that public transit reduces congestion. No doubt that it doesn't, but it doesn't reach all the areas of Southern California. A study by the American Public Transportation Association, APTA, proves that only one half of the Americans enjoy access to convenient means of transport. The Los Angeles subway offers fast and clean accommodations. However, it fails to venture into some of the city's heavy traffic neighborhoods, like West Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, or Santa Monica. Moreover, the frequency of the bus services in particular is less, which causes inconvenience to the public. Sometimes there is a bus every 10 to 15 minutes, but at other times, public have to wait for almost 20 to 30 minutes. Not getting to the desired location on time can be an irritant. Thus, its frequency and distance covered may not serve the public's needs to the fullest, making it difficult to get around the city. Finally, I would like to add that public transit is not the only option for a greener California. The major benefit of private transportation over public transit is increased mobility. Nowadays, almost all cars are fitted with green technology to reduce the effects of global warming. Battery electric vehicles, or BEVs, use chemical energy stored in rechargeable battery packs. These types of electric vehicles use electric motors and motor controllers instead of internal combustion engines for thrust. Besides, my opponent makes a big inference when he mentions that we must cut down on 90% of oil consumption, which does not seem so practical and is almost impossible. Another greener method other than the use of public transportation is simply riding a cycle. This is a sustainable and healthy choice which can largely benefit people both financially and physically. And of course, in our own small way, we can contribute to a greener environment and can reduce our dependency on public transit. To summarize, there may be advantages of public transit expressed by my candidate. However, the advantages of owning a private car or a battery-powered electric vehicle far outweigh the use of public transit. One can wait for public transport to take you wherever it takes you or whenever it takes you. On the contrary, you can use your own green transport and reach anywhere at any time without depending on anyone. I think the choice is clear. Thank you.
All right, most of your argument consists of counterclaims on the major issues, and I thought you did an okay job on some of those counterclaims. The first one on the tax issue, you basically say that they've stopped income from this one particular source. I need a source citation on that so that we know that those projects can't be funded. And by the way, you don't really give us any total amount on how much any of those projects would be. You basically accept the advocate's point of view that it's going to be $15,000 a year. Maybe you diminish that a little bit by suggesting that they used used cars, but the idea that public transit is cheaper is taken as a given, and I'm not sure that that's a valid point, because most public transit, for instance, substantially subsidizes ridership currently. You ought to be investigating that a little bit more. The tax issue is a relevant issue, but it's not really developed very much. On the next issue, which is basically about convenience and whether or not people are going to be able to have appropriate access, I think that you've got some good arguments here, that there's a limited access, that they don't go to the relevant places. Those are okay presses on this particular issue. The same thing with the bus and the amount of time. What you ought to show is that there is strong consumer demand for those sorts of things. I'll shut up soon in just a second. I like the idea of the alternate options, as a way of addressing those points. You discuss it primarily through green technology. I'm not so sure that green technology is the most important issue. I don't remember if the advocate was talking about those environmental issues as being the key issue here, but you did say at one point that they suggested that we need to have a 90% reduction in oil, and you say that that's unrealistic. Well, you need to explain to us why it's unrealistic. Is there any way to move, for instance, all the people in cars into public transit and be able to function the way we are doing? I think that's the key issue. Everything's easy to follow. I think you have some good counterclaims. I don't think there's always much analysis of the advocate's evidence and arguments on those points.